It's really a lot of trial and error, what your mama said, or, things of that nature. And so it allowed me to realize that this is a skill set. Learning how to deal with people and manage your relationships and things like that is really a skill set. And I think a lot of times people feel like they should just know how to engage with one another.
Right.
But there's actually helpful tools and tips that you can utilize to be more successful.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the How Do You Medicine podcast, brought to you by yours truly, the Dynamic Doc. So today we have a guest with us. Our very first guest is Dr. Courtney Howard. So Dr. Howard is a board-certified psychiatrist and specializes both in geriatrics and relationships. She hails from Alabama, Birmingham to be exact, and did her college education in Spelman, got a bachelor's in biology, and then went on to do medical school at University of Alabama School of Medicine, and then did a residency in psychiatry at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine in the Bronx. So now she currently practices in Georgia with Kaiser Permanente. So, and of course, we'll talk more about her journey and dive more into how does she medicine. So please welcome Dr. Courtney Howard. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, welcome. Thank you.
So let's get into it. So first, you're a psychiatrist. So why psychiatry?
So psychiatry for me was just a field that I really felt like it was where the underdogs were, like going in, at the time, at least, this is back in like 2012 or so when I was exploring psychiatry before, the whole mental health therapy thing that people are on now. It was just something like, why would you go in psychiatry? Why do you want to do that? And I just felt like it was the place for me because I just loved being able to help someone who feels like they're at the end of their rope, turn their life around and feel like hope and a desire to live and just live their best life. It was just very rewarding. So that's why I chose psychiatry.
Perfect. And then, while and some people may not know this, but whenever you're in residency, you always have an option to subspecialize or you can just, remain general. And you chose to subspecialize in geriatrics and also do extra training in relationships. So why not just do regular psychiatry? Why did you choose to do that extra training?
Well, with geriatrics in particular, it's still a lot of family work, which involves relationships to a degree. So I wanted more time to just focus on that training. And I felt like it was just a good way to also work on my leadership skills, because in fellowship is just different from just general training where it's just kind of you learning the basics, but fellowship takes you up that extra notch. So geriatrics was good for more family work. And then relationships, I had the great opportunity to do a special program called University Scholars in New York, and it allowed me to dive into an interest that it's related to psychiatry, but there's not like a full-on course for it. So it allowed me to be able to create my own program where I could take just time off to study these things that were really of interest to me, that I felt were really important in the mental wellness of people, because relationships, for how many people does that cause a lot of trauma and stress?
Right.
Learning more about how to navigate that and help people and learn skills and things like that. It was just something that was very important to me.
Right. And actually, in talking about relationships, I think that's something, oftentimes people talk about generational wealth, but relationships and how you do relationships can be generational as well. So tell us a little bit about the kind of nuggets that you took from your specialized training in that, like in relationships in general, that you kind of have carried with you since.
Yeah. So essentially, there's just a lot about relationships we just never know growing up. It's not like we get it taught to us in school, college, wherever. There's no special training that we all go through where it's like, this is the best way how to go about relationships. It's really a lot of trial and error, what your mama said, or, things of that nature. And so it allowed me to realize that this is a skill set. Learning how to deal with people and manage your relationships and things like that is really a skill set. And I think a lot of times people feel like they should just know how to engage with one another.
Right.
But there's actually helpful tools and tips that you can utilize to be more successful. one of the people that I really did enjoy learning and doing more of their research and understanding more about what they do is through Gottman, or John Gottman, Julie Gottman, his wife. They have a ton of information out nowadays around relationships. So just being able to take the time to read more of their books and learn more about their studies and what techniques and skills really are fruitful for long-term satisfying relationships. I thought it was awesome because I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, experience can be the best lesson and best way of learning things, but you don't always have to go through it. Like bought experience can work just as well. So it was really great to be a part of that.
And those individuals that you mentioned they're doing relationship work now. Is that what?
Yeah, so it's a psychologist and a therapist. I don't know, I can't remember her exact licensing title, but they've done research and work in that. They had what they call a love lab where they've studied couples over years and just were able, at this point now, to be able to predict which couples are going to probably be on the verge of divorce just based on the patterns of what they've been able to observe. And it's a high rate. So I think it's like 90% or higher that they can
predict or the accuracy.
To get like, hey, this couple is probably not going to make it, just on basic things. So one of their core principles is something around the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. It sounds so like
what?
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, but it is like meant to be like signs that your relationship could probably be over soon. And so they note that like, people who are very critical, people who are defensive and they don't take responsibility, people who, what they call it, stonewall, essentially you just kind of shut down and don't engage with your partner. Your partner could be like trying to talk to you and you just don't engage. That causes problems, even though sometimes people think, oh, if I just don't engage, we won't argue. That can cause a whole nother set of problems.
Right.
The biggest thing was what they call contempt, which is essentially disrespect, you lazy, just really terrible name calling, things of that nature is probably like the number one predictor.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's just kind of the way that you deal with conflict. Like, okay, so if you tend to engage in these certain
you like real low, do the low blow, all those things. You're like, yeah, you probably
hit it where it hurts type of characters, you're not gonna make it.
Yes.
That and then they provide. I'm assuming they have like programs where they provide counseling for various individuals. That just sounds like something they would.
So they now have where individual therapists can buy their resources and they have a whole curriculum and things like that. So if the therapist wanted to take on a couple who may be having problems, they'll use that as their kind of guideline of like, okay, well, let's recognize the harmful behaviors in the relationship. And then here's the solutions that you all can try, kind of thing like that. And they just have all that compiled for people. So just all across the country, they just disseminate the information.
Oh, okay. So it's not like, because, I think a lot of people don't realize that when it comes to medicine in general or healthcare professionals in general, you have to be licensed in certain areas. You can't just, it's not like, board certification is one thing, but licensing is another. There's steps, right? Like you go to med school and then you go to residency, but then you have to be board certified to say, I know what I need to know about this field. But then also you have to be licensed in different geographical areas. And I think that's kind of maybe not as widely known. And, maybe this person's a good psychologist or psychiatrist, but they may not be able to treat you because they may not be licensed in California. They may not be licensed in Massachusetts or Georgia. And so it seems like those individuals they just kind of provide general guidance in addition to being able to do geographical, like kind of where they are, kind of therapy with people, it seems like.
Yeah, so general, so like say something like this, I could give like general knowledge and whoever pick it up or whatnot. But if there's a specific couple that comes and they're like, hey, I want you to like counsel us, but they're in Ohio and I'm not licensed to practice in Ohio. So even now with video, this comes up a lot. People are like, but we're on the video, like you can't still, engage with me. I'm like, no, I'm sorry. Like licensing rules still apply. So yeah.
Yeah, because it depends on where you reside, right? I mean, obviously, if you're on vacation in Florida, that's fine because you reside and your regular PCPs in Massachusetts, you reside in Massachusetts, you're having a televisit, and you happen to be on vacation in Florida. Generally, that's fine. But again, you have to be very careful not to be like, I now live in Florida. And it's like, well, you now have to have someone that's licensed in Florida to take care of you. And I think oftentimes, again, when you do talks and things like that, which we'll get into a little bit, because I know you've done some of those, people could call in and be like, so, when we talk about relationships, my mom does this, my boyfriend does this, and that type of thing. What would be your advice? And you kind of have to tiptoe the line between giving specialized advice, which you can't give, versus like a general rule of thumb is. So I think that's important for people to know. To that end, I know you've done kind of some talks and things like that. So I wanted to kind of get into, why did you add that as to How You Medicine?
Because demand right now for mental health things has just been very high, and there's only so many people that you can reach within your clinic or wherever. But being able to do talks and things like such as this, where this could be broadcast on YouTube, and whomever comes across it, they can learn about it and have the information for it. It's just, the reach is just much wider when you do more talks.
Gotcha. Yep. Inspiring more and being able to reach more people. And like you said, I think a lot of people, and I think mental health is very, is important, but it's one of those things that often fall by the wayside. Do you know what I mean? Like, because it doesn't hurt. We often take care of, your knee bothers you. Yeah, you're going to take care of that because every time you walk, it reminds you. But I think, and just tying in with relationships, one of my pastors used to say, be careful when dysfunction becomes your norm. So a lot of times we just kind of walk into our dysfunction in terms of relationships and whatever. And that's kind of what we have acclimated to emotionally. So we don't notice the daily traumas, the daily things that we're kind of dealing with, or the daily ways we deal with people, because it doesn't hurt like aching back or headache, or your eyes hurting, visions changing, things like that. But then over time, the cumulative effect of hurting people is usually not noticed until an area, a time of crisis, or at one time, maybe, if you do get a psychiatrist or a psychologist, you're just like, have I been doing this for the past however many decades? Is this how I've been dealing with like life and relationships? Or unfortunately, when you have your marriage in that particular situation, unfortunately, where you're like, I don't know if we're going to make it, then you're really diving in. And that's when you're doing the relationship work that, we alluded to earlier, that maybe would have been helpful to do in your singleness or early on. Because as you stated, people don't, how you go to school and there's baseline things you do. Everyone learns their ABCs. Everyone learns how to read. Everyone learns math. There's no, everyone's on a level playing field relationship wise, which is interesting because it's interwoven in every aspect of life. But then we're just like, as such, we should know it. Moving on. And you're just like, but should we? And I think that then that's directly tied into mental health, because as we know, relationships can, deteriorate mental health and can be either supportive or toxic to your mental health. So then talk to me about how kind of you're using your relationship work now to do, perpetuate, healthy individuals in general.
So I'm not using it in a focus area right now, just because for my job right now, demand is just been crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But I do tie it in when I do come across people who maybe the source of their depression or anxiety has to do with how they're navigating their relationships. And it's just a clear, that approach may not be the best approach. And so I'm able to try to do a little education.
As a good adjunct.
Yeah. And to the depression, anxiety, or whatever they're presenting for, add that other education to them. So it's kind of been more in that way, which is still great, because it's, the ultimate goal is to provide them that relief and understanding. And so a lot of people, like I said, no knowledge of, how do you navigate it, and stuff that's been normalized for them. Like, this is
Right.
not how relationships are supposed to work.
Right. No. Let's start over. Okay, so no. So no. That's not, but that, you know what? There's hope.
There's hope.
There's like,
Yeah.
I already said there's hope. Let's start over. So, and I think, and that can just that information itself, like that, no, that's not how it's supposed to go, in itself can be such an earth-shattering revelation for that individual. Because especially if, depending on their family dynamic, they thought of themselves as the healthiest one. Well, I don't hurt, I don't hit anyone. I don't, curse anyone out. So I must be doing fine, because comparatively speaking, I'm great. And I think that's another issue, because then if what you're surrounded by is just kind of in a level worse than you, then sometimes you can be kind of falsely, reinforced. Like, well, I'm not as bad as my cousin now, so I should be great. And you're like, but you're not. And I think, in my field, even as an allergist, telling someone like, okay, you have asthma, they're like, but my cousin has asthma. They wheeze all the time. Every time they get sick, they have to go to the hospital. I'm not my cousin, therefore, I don't have asthma. Kind of like, well, my dad does this, or my mom does this, or my cousin does this. I don't do that. Therefore, I must be relationally, I must be healthy. And it's just like, no, there are levels to a lack of relationship help. Let me help you. So, number one, no. Number two, yes, that could be attributing to your depression. Let's talk about it. And I think, but of course, by the time they come to you, they are clearly open to taking that step of seeking professional help to help them in that journey.
Right.
And to that end, I know that you have said before that you want to create a safe space or a healthy space for your patients to feel supported, so they can heal and kind of figure out how to lead a fulfilling life. And here in Dynamic Doc, we're all about living your life fully on purpose for a purpose. And it sounds like that's kind of a space that that's something that you've kind of wanted to create for your patients. So tell us more about how you've been able to create that space, or how do you go about making sure you create that safe space?
Yeah, and I do want people to understand it's not about a physical space when I'm saying this. It's just, especially now, I'm doing a lot of telehealth kind of stuff. And so just that moment, that connection with the person, you want to make sure that they feel like they are able to relax and feel comfortable sharing. This is very personal and, information that they're sharing. So you want to make sure that they feel comfortable, because we can't get to the root if you aren't absolutely honest about what is exactly going on. So a lot is just, about rapport building, checking in, how you're doing, and really trying to listen and see how are you doing, not just kind of, how we doing passing, walking by, how you doing? Oh, I'm fine. What is really at the heart of what's going on. So creating that safe space, because that is the key into helping someone tap into what's really wrong. And then we can go in and figure out what is it that you really need. So I do just people to be able to feel like if there's a mask they wear when they're outside, or, sometimes you can't even share certain things with family or other people because they're a little more biased. And so making sure they know, I'm not family, I'm not, I don't have any particular investment in you where I need to persuade you to choose one thing or the other. No, this is really just about you, and you have the opportunity to explore your feelings. And sometimes it's just easier to explore scarier places when you have somebody there to support you, almost like you're holding that person's hand and we're going to go into the dark forest and explore this trauma. But it's easier if you have someone there with you. And if it seems like, okay, this is becoming a little much, take your hand, let's pull out of the forest, so to speak. So it's just really about, supporting that person in those dark places. I'm here to support you through it.
Right. And I think to that end, oftentimes people may not have that support system, and they may not know initially how to deal or how to fully take advantage of that resource, of that support system. Because oftentimes it's a good thing that you have it, but you're like, but how do I nurture it? How do I have a healthy relationship with my therapist, with my psychologist, with my psychiatrist? Okay. And then that ties directly into stigmas, right? Like stigmas of mental health professionals. And are they here, especially if you're in a situation where there may be a recommendation for pharmacotherapy, then you're just like, now you're like, well, wait a minute, am I there? Am I that bad? Or am I, or is that really what I need? And I think, to your point, creating a safe space to say, I'm here for you, so that whatever I recommend, is for you and for the betterment of you. So that way there's not as much resistance to whatever may come up that may be needed, whether it's some, advice that may be hard to hear, or some, therapy that may be hard to accept that may be needed even at the time. There's a certain level of stigma and permanence that's put into things like pharmacotherapy and mental health treatment, that people just assume that the needing mental health treatment, and it makes you somehow ostracized rather, or not normal or unhealthy, when in fact the opposite is true. So, I really like that analogy of the dark forest, right? Because it's really the unknown. I've never explored these feelings. I don't know what I'm going to find when I explore them, because most of the time our minds have been conditioned to push them down so we can move forward. And we don't work through things. We always work around them. Okay, this is a bump in the road. Let me just walk around, and that, it happened and it's in the past. And, there is a quote that says, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. So you're just like, you didn't deal with why you lashed out back there. So then you just moved on. And so you've kind of been like, no, dark forest? What's a dark forest? No, I don't know what you're talking about. But no, it's sunshine over here. Sun's shining. I don't know what you're saying. And you're just like, anyways. And so now someone's like, but we gotta go in. And you're like, and what?
We have to go. Like, this is important. I got you there.
And you're just like, you're like, no, you have a nightlight or something? Do I need to go in here? I'm fine. I was just here because of my marriage. What do you mean? What do you mean? I don't need work on me. I mean, he's the one that, do I need? No, the forest. I mean, Doc, you cool, but we just really. And I think sometimes it takes someone, as you said, unbiased, that's not your family, that you can't lash out and say, man, you always blaming me. You're always saying I'm the issue. You're always saying I'm the problem, because that's not your cousin. You know what I mean? And then you can say, okay, that person is here for me. They're unbiased because it's their job to be unbiased. So therefore, maybe let me give this a try. But I also want people to know it's open mind is the key to being able to live a healthy, full life on purpose, for a purpose. You have to be open to your needs and be open to what your mental health and personal health has said you needed. Because we have our idea of what we need, from, I'm good with 5 hours of sleep, to, no, 1 day off a week is fine. So that's what we say. Mm-hmm. But all the while, our mental health and our bodies are like, but if permission to speak, we'd really like, if you could just squeeze in 6 hours, that'd be great. I'd really like that. That'd be great. And while you're at it, if you could just kind of like rest 2 days instead of half a day a week and not work overtime every single time your boss asks, that would be nice. Respectfully, your body and mind. Do you know what I mean? I think that promoting self-care is another kind of healing space. And I think, it's just creating that space, like you said, I think it's a skill that I'm sure you learned during medicine and doing training, and I think going into relationships, a lot of us don't know how to create the safe space, much less be in the safe space. Like, what do I do with this space? What would you say to someone who is thinking about, maybe I need to see a psychiatrist, but I don't know what mindset should I be in? How can I be ready, or how, to take that step? What advice would you give those people?
I think what you were saying is, keep an open mind, that's good. Like, this is a new area, but ideally the right therapist, will kind of orient you, because I think a lot of it is that unknown space of orient you to how this typically will go. Oftentimes in the beginning, it may be a lot more of you talking. I know a lot of times people like to come in that first session and, want that problem solved. But sometimes in order to see the full picture, the therapist needs more of your story, needs to understand certain things. So then they can see like, oh, maybe this is the puzzle that's missing. So a lot of times in the beginning, it may be that you're just talking, but you eventually can get to that place of understanding and what is the issue or what maybe your block is. Another thing is that, sometimes it just may not be the right fit. With the therapist, it's important to feel like you connect with that person, because if you're going to open up some of these vulnerable places, you need to feel that connection, that comfort. And sometimes it's just not a match. And there's just nothing that anyone did or, whatever. It just is not a good fit. So don't let the first time, if you go and it just is not, you don't feel comfortable or, it's okay. Move on to the next one, find another one. But it can be something that's very, very beneficial. A lot of times in the beginning, there'll be that rapport building and you getting comfortable so that then you all can journey to the deeper things. So it's not like the first day, not typically the first day, they're like, tell me your most vulnerable secrets. Like, that's not going to really work. That's not how we work as humans. Like, you have to build that rapport first. So just going in and just know that really you just need to show up and be prepared to be honest, because we can't help you if we don't honestly know what's the real issue.
Perfect. And that again, all of this is about relationships. Just like you may try a course, a teacher, a school, and that may not be the right fit. It doesn't mean you don't need to get that certification. Doesn't mean you don't need to get that degree. Doesn't mean you don't need to take that class. Doesn't mean you don't need that information. It just means that the delivery of that information, that particular teacher, their method may not work for you. Oftentimes, there's an unfortunate event where people are like, I tried therapy once. I didn't like the therapist. So therefore, therapy is not for me. And it's like, no, don't give up the entire field because one individual didn't gel with you, right? It's a field, it doesn't comprise of a person or even a group of people like therapists or psychiatrists. And I think going in with the mindset that if I don't gel with this professional, it's okay, because that can happen, but I'm committed to trying. And therefore, I want to try. And you know what? Sometimes there's psychologists that may give you a free consultation that may say, you know what? Let's talk first and decide whether my vibe matches your vibe before we commit to this. And then you can give them a try, and then you can make that decision. And that way you're going in, kind of low risk, if you will. It's only, going to be benefiting you. It's only positive from there, being able to say, I talked to such and such, and I could see myself opening up to that person. Or, you know what, this isn't for me. And don't feel bad about saying, this isn't for me. Very similar to if you're going speed dating, it's okay if contestant number 1 isn't for you. That's right. All right.
That's all right.
You know what? Everyone ain't for everybody, just like every therapist, every psychiatrist, isn't for everyone. And so being able to go, like you said, open mind and knowing that there's work to be done. It took work to get to where you were in the level of dysfunction and the things that need help. Therefore, it will take work to get out of the level of dysfunction. Just like tying a knot took work, untying it takes just as much, if not more work, depending on how tight life has made that knot over time. And so I think that's a key nugget. So I wanted to ask, what if someone is like, oh man, Dr. Howard did some panels, did some talks. I kind of want to do that. Connecting with your desire to be, again, being able to reach a wider net of people. What would you say to them as just kind of a way to get started?
Meaning if they want to do specific therapy with me?
No, if they wanted to talk, like do talks, I'm sorry. Like they're a health professional.
Okay. I really just, I don't know that I actually sought out anything. I think as you work with your network and let them know this is what I'm doing and, this is what interests me, it just kind of started to fall in place kind of that way where people are like, oh, I have this going on and I'm looking for a speaker. But I think a lot of it is showing that, okay, this is what I'm interested in. This is the work I've put into it to, make sure you sound like you're legit and you know what you're talking about. And just making it known to as many people and places as you can. I think that was kind of really the route I ended up taking, just kind of putting it out there and, your social media, LinkedIn, networking, and letting people know. And just, as people see a need for it and, if they don't have a need for it, utilizing spaces like YouTube where you create your own need and like start doing your talks yourself and, sending that out to wherever you want to send it. So just get started, even if, no one asks you specifically. YouTube is a great platform for you to still share your message and eventually, it'll get picked up.
Yeah. And I think people need to know that your message is important. Just because you don't currently have a big audience doesn't mean that your message is not important. Mm-hmm. Everything that you have to say is important because we all have a voice, and we have a voice because of the importance of that voice. And so, yeah, it's up to you to decide how you want to use that voice and what you want to say when you do talk. The singer Monica always said one of the biggest things that she said is when you talk, say something. So, you have a voice, you're going to, use it, but try to figure out what is it that you're going to say. And again, tell people what is it that you want to do or say, and then the right people will gravitate. But it sounds like the key word you're saying here is networking. So, if you want to get out there, you must get out there. People aren't going to come in and find you. But, as you organically meet people, you organically gravitate to people with similar both interests and goals. And then that would take from there. So we want to end on the note of, so Dr. Howard, what would you say is your biggest takeaway from your journey thus far?
Career-wise or just life lessons?
You know what? Let's do both. I like the way that both sounds. We'll start with career and then we'll go. We kind of like life lesson nuggets that kind of will help people, obviously, as we talked about being better, like life handlers or being better life livers, I should say.
Well, career, I feel like I've had a lot of gratitude for being in such a space. Like there's not many spaces you can go in life where people will share their deepest fears, the things that they're struggling with and things like that, and really feel like they can open up to you and you really make a change in their life, that they just feel like there's nowhere else that they can really feel safe to turn to and share things. So that's just been really rewarding. I just never want to take for granted the trust that people place in me to be in this position and, whatever in life, even though it can get stressful trying to manage so many people, especially now after 2020, just demand was crazy. But still trying to do what I can to reach that need. So I think just remember to always just kind of lead from a place of gratitude. We will have the stressful moments, but in those moments, shifting back to, this is a special place that I get to be in to really be able to help people on a level that many people won't be able to help them on. So that's just been something that's career-wise been very rewarding. And I think with life, what I'm starting to appreciate more is that life really is a journey, and, things change. Like you never know like what's going to come into your life or what's going to be introduced into your life to make you say, what, yes, I've gone this journey of being a doctor and I did invest these years, but now there's something else that I want to put my focus on and I'm going to pivot and go that way. And there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like the journey in and of itself, it's not like, to me, the journey in becoming a doctor has taught me a lot of lessons, gave me a lot of experiences. Like, I don't think I would have been in New York and, come across you and things of that nature had I not been on this journey. And I've had some great experiences from it and things that I've learned that I still think will serve me no matter what direction life takes me. So not being afraid or not feeling like, oh, I did all this work in this one area. Now this is it. I think of like even like Hugh Harper or somebody where he trained as a lawyer at Harvard, but he's totally an actor or something like that. So just being open to what life gives you and what life presents to you, and just not feeling like you have to be stuck and trapped in one lane and doing one thing. Like the dynamic doc knows that there's we have many talents and gifts, and so don't box in to just do one thing. You can do everything that you feel like you're able to commit to and, put honest effort in, go for it.
Yes, I love it. Shameless plug. Actually, Dr. Howard and I have been knowing each other since either of us had degrees at all. And we met each other, we didn't have any. We had high school diplomas. We had high school diplomas with relaxed hair is what we had. So, and then we met each other in a summer program. So New York's very actually special to us because we met in New York. And then we both did training in New York. So our relationship has just kind of like been solidified and reinforced and all that stuff in the Big Apple. So, and of course, we've gone through this, evolution of life, living life, multidimensionality that you mentioned. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the dynamic lifestyle that the one and only Dr. Courtney Howard lives with her. What are you on your second passport now? Because let me tell you, I am a lover of traveling. However, I am not at the level of Dr. Courtney Howard. So tell us about, and I know I said we were going to end on that note, but I wanted to really speak to balance because, as living your life and things that you wanted to do, whether it's business ventures or reaching people in a certain way and, doing healthcare differently, which is really what this podcast is all about, promoting people doing healthcare their way. But also part of that is living a balanced life, including doing hobbies and things like traveling. How are you able to pull yourself out of, some people can get so bogged down with work. Like, I work, I come home, I work, I come home, I barely have time to rest. How do you navigate that balance that allows you to live a full life?
Well, I'm incredibly happy at my current position that they do believe in flexibility and do believe in trying to, find a win-win for both the physicians as well as the company. And so I've been able to set up to where I can have like a day off during the week and a half a day off too, where I have the opportunity to explore these things that if I worked 5 days a week, I just don't think it would be something that I could do. So being able to commit to feeling like, okay, I have this that I like to do, but they're willing to allow me to create space, find some place that will allow you to kind of still be able to pursue the things that are important to you, but then, cater to what is necessary for the company. That's been great. I feel like the weekends, you just have to make time. 'Cause I think I can't remember what it was, but some program, they were saying, like, when it's time to go home, like go home. Like the work is still going to be there. It's not going to go, and it's going to keep coming. Like it's going to be just ongoing. And so you have to just actually stop and step away, do your best to, wrap up, but like, don't give more of your time than need be, because it's also important for you to refresh and relax and do things that are going to bring joy, especially for me in my field, doing something that can be mentally taxing. I need that refreshment. So I have to put a stop and say, I'm going to go. It'll be here tomorrow. So yeah, so you just have to actually just kind of set that boundary yourself a lot of times.
So I'm hearing you say, stop and step away, set boundaries and refresh. Because you can't, like, if you don't refuel, you don't run on fumes any more than your car does.
No.
And so, in order to give the best of you or to be the best of you, you have to give yourself the opportunity to even refuel and even get there in the first place. So with that, I think it's a great place to end our podcast episode. We would like to do a special thank you to Dr. Courtney Howard, our special guest, our very first special guest, for being here. And thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to go ahead and follow or subscribe, depending on the modality you're in. And again, we'd like to thank our special guest for sharing her journey and how she medicines. Definitely check out other episodes and definitely subscribe. And there will be both a podcast version, but again, if you'd like to see the video version, you can hit up the YouTube channel at The Dynamic Doc. So with that, we'll sign off. And so this is Dynamic Doc reminding you to live a full life on purpose, for a purpose. So be blessed, be safe, and stay peaceful. Be blessed. Peace.